Veronica presents the AI Repertory Theatre's production of New World Papers. Book 1, The Historian's Tale, by K.B. Shaw. Chapter 7.
Over the next several days, we talked to everyone who had been in the house when we left. This is the story they told. The molding around the front door was beginning to splinter and the wall to crack under the relentless pounding, but the sturdy door held. Lenore Bedford put on her housemistress smock and made one final sweep around the great room to make sure nothing was left behind. She picked up some papers from a table and tucked them into her smock pocket.
"Go now,"
she said to the two men with their back to the door.
"You know what to do."
As soon as she was alone, she called,
"Stop that! Stop that right now! You're breaking the door!"
The pounding continued.
"I dare not approach the door, much less open it with you pounding so."
Silence.
"Are you done then?"
"Open the door,"
Came a man's shout from outside. Lenore stepped to the door and slid open the small eye hole. 4 men in black coats and slouch hats stood shivering in the cold. It had begun to snow.
"Quiet now. The missus has come home quite ill. I've been tending her and just got her settled when you started your banging."
"Open up."
"Shouldn't you be home with family? We are tending the ill and preparing to shut her up for the season, as you should be."
"Open the door."
"On whose authority?
"The council's."
For what purpose?"
"A search. Open."
Lenore shut the eye hole and unlatched, unbolted, and unlocked the door. As she opened it, the dark men flooded in after the one who had done the talking. The last man through shut the door behind him.
"Identify yourself."
"This is our house. You first."
The man glared. Lenore remained silent.
"The name is Wessler. Ernst Wessler. I've come on council business. And you are?"
"Lenore Bedford?"
Missy?"
"That is of no importance, since I would never contract with a man so of your age."
"And why are you here?"
"I run the household. My father is the butler, carriage driver, butcher. You get the idea. We have just a small staff. We're understaffed, actually. That's how Mrs. Greer got sick. A friend told us about a boy at the Mount. That's why she made a hasty trip before the snows to, how do I say this delicately? Acquire some cheap help?"
Wessler looked dubious. He reached into his coat and withdrew a folded sheet of paper. He shook it open and held it out for Lenore to see.
"Orders from the council to search the house and grounds.
"Search? For what?"
Solarist materials."
"We don't have any—" "No, wait, Mrs. Greer gave me this to dispose of."
She pulled the papers from her smock and handed them to the dark man.
"She got them at the Mount. From Headmaster Hunninger, I believe. I haven't had time to burn them."
Wessler skimmed the pages.
"Yes, these should be burned. And the Solarists with them."
"Well, that seems to clear that up. You have what you came for, so good day to you, gentlemen."
As she began to open the door, Wessler kicked it shut.
"Search the place.
He said to the men.
Account for everyone here."
He turned on Lenore.
"I want to see Mrs. Greer."
"I told you, she's ill in bed."
"Now."
She led Wessler toward the back of the house. 2 of the men were tearing the great room apart as they passed. Lenore was certain nothing would be found.
"They're making a mess."
"You'll have all high conjunction to put it right."
Mrs. Greer's rooms took up the south rear corner of the sprawling house. The bedroom was dark, with the winter shutters closed both inside and out, and the heavy drapes drawn. Their footsteps and the clang of heating pipes were the only noises in these back hallways.
"Try not to disturb the missus,"
said Lenore as she opened the bedroom door. There was a faint hiss from the radiator. The room was warm and misty from steam. The light from the fireplace made the foggy room glow and pulsate.
"Lenore."
Came a weak voice from the bed.
"Yes, it's me, missus, and a man from the council."
"Oh, please keep him a safe distance. I don't want to be the cause of someone else spending the high conjunction, sick in bed."
The dark man took one step into the room.
"You just returned from a trip, Mrs. Greer."
"Yes."
"Where did you go?"
To the Mount. To buy myself a servant boy.
Was that the only reason for your trip?
Yes. Ask that little pig, Hunninger, if you doubt me.
And on your return trip, did you make any stops?
3. We spent the nights at a few inns. One was called the Ram's Head, I believe, and another was the Glinsford, Glendale, Glyn something.
Wessler, apparently satisfied, held up a hand to stop her. He stepped from the room and motioned Lenore to follow. She joined him in the hall and closed the bedroom door. Aiden waited 5 minutes before getting out of bed and removing her grandmother's bedclothes. She reconstructed her grandmother's form with a couple of extra blankets and pillows, crept to the door, and cracked it open to see if the way was clear. She slipped into the hallway, quietly closing the bedroom door behind her. Then she padded softly down the hall a few meters, where she pulled back a tapestry, opened a servant's passage, and disappeared. Wessler and Lenore ran into another of the dark men as she was leading him through the labyrinth of guest rooms and the servants' quarters, which were filled with smells from the kitchen. When the trio arrived in the kitchen area, they found 2 cooks busy with their holiday preparations. Aiden was there too, sitting on a stool with her arm curled around a large mixing bowl, working a wooden spoon. She looked surprised when she saw the 2 men.
Search this area,
Said Wessler to his companion.
The others will work their way back here.
He pulled out a stool next to Aiden and sat down. He looked at her intently.
Lenore, who is this rude man? He's from the council.
Another look of surprise.
Have we met?
I don't think so. I'd remember you.
Are you sure? I'm sure. It was recently.
It couldn't have been. I was on a trip upland with my grandmother. We only just got home today.
She turned to Lenore.
How's she doing?
I looked in on her just a bit ago. The room is warm and she seems to be resting comfortably, miss.
Wessler looked between the 2 women before settling on Lenore.
These old manners.
He was interrupted by the arrival of the other dark men. He held up a finger, halting them in their tracks.
As I was saying, these old manor houses were built with servant passages, weren't they?
Yes.
Answered Lenore without hesitation.
Let me show you.
Show them.
He said, waving his hand vaguely in the direction of the men who had just entered. To them he said,
Be thorough.
Lenore opened a panel next to the larder door.
This is the passage to the dining room. If you'll follow me.
When the men were gone, Wessler reached out and touched Aiden on the shoulder, as if he were picking a piece of lint. Then he brushed the back of his hand against her copper hair as he withdrew it.
Why don't you show me to the cellars?
Aiden turned to the cook, a sturdy-looking woman of about 50, and tipped the bowl in her direction.
Is this stirred enough to leave it, Effie?
'Tis, miss. But let me show the man to the basement. I need to check on them men doing the butchering anyways.
She'll show me around.
But I'll be coming along just the same if you don't mind.
I do mind.
The cook finished cutting a potato, set down her knife, wiped her hands, and started toward the cellar door.
It's this way.
She pulled a cast-iron key from her apron and unlocked the heavy cellar door.
Are you coming or aren't you?
Wessler stood up angrily, almost knocking over the stool. With a jerk of his head, he told Aiden to follow the cook's lead. Immediately, the dark man knew that it would take a larger crew to search the dimly lit cellars thoroughly.
Are there any servant passages down here?
These are servant passages. Other than curious children exploring, who else would come down here besides us?
She led Wessler into the curing room and through the hanging carcasses. An older man and a young lad were standing at the butcher's table with their backs toward the visitors. A single gas lamp on the back wall lit the butcher's table, casting the men as silhouettes.
No,
Chided the man.
put your whole shoulder into it like this.
He raised a cleaver over his head and brought it down in a violent manner,
Ahem.
said the cook to get the men's attention. The 2 turned toward the noise. The stocky, older man had dark skin and close-cropped hair graying at the temples. He was wearing a white butcher's coat and leather apron. The younger man was dressed the same, his apron and face smeared with blood.
Mr. Bedford, this man is from the council. He's having a look around.
The council? Looking around.
He wiped both hands on his apron and extended one in greeting. Wessler made no move to reciprocate.
Bedford, the house mistress's father?
Yes.
And this is?
Fallon, a new boy we got from the Mount.
The dark man studied them both for a moment before turning on his heels and saying to the cook,
Take me back upstairs.
Aiden followed as far as the cellar stairs, then headed back to the curing room.
Do you think they bought it?
Asked the young man, wiping the blood from his face.
Hope so.
Said the older man as he hung his apron on a peg and unbuttoned his butcher's coat, revealing layers of sweaters that made him look heavier than he was. Wessler marched straight to the front hall, calling for his men as he went. Lenore followed close on his heels. The dark men converged on the hall at almost the same time.
Find anything?
The men indicated they had nothing to report. Wessler grunted.
What's the count?
I found 2 male servants,
Said one.
One beefy, the other lean.
That's them.
The twins.
Said Wessler.
And we questioned the maid.
Said another man.
That's 3. With the 2 in the cellar, the cooks, the old lady and her granddaughter and the house mistress, that makes 10. Does that check out with the number of occupied rooms?
When a Cincinnati man.
We counted the missus and the miss, and 7 servants' beds. That's 9.
Who's the extra?
The new boy, Fallon. He brought nothing with him from the Mount. We haven't given him a room yet.
Wessler gave her another stern look before opening the door.
Did their names match the list?
Yes, sir. Except for the boy. He wasn't listed.
Wessler led his men into the cold. The snow was already ankle deep.
Nobody comes or goes.
He was saying as Lenore closed and secured the door. She pressed her ear against the wood.
Seal the doors, windows, any way out of this place. The snow will be halfway to the eaves in a few days, but I don't want them to be able to tunnel their way out.
The dark men must have planned their actions from the start, for they had what they needed with them. Lenore and the 8 others followed the hammering sounds from room to room as the dark men boarded up the windows. Lenore had no illusions that anyone would be leaving the house anytime soon. It troubled her, but she found solace in the fact that the dark men had not discovered the 2 passages on the basement level, one leading to the massive living and working quarters, and the other, even more secret passage that led to the basin. Only a select few knew exactly where this passage was. Lenore was the only person still topside who knew. She gathered the staff in the kitchen.
I don't think it's safe to stay up here. Percy, go down to the quarters and organize the men into parties. Gather every scrap of food and any supplies we have in the house and take them to the quarters. Addie, you need to go along and send the women to me. Effie, you and Anne gather all your kitchen stuff together. Tom and Harvey, pack it up and haul it downstairs. The rest of us will collect blankets, towels, bedding, clothes, anything. Everything we might need for a long stay.
The opening to the underground living quarters was not as hidden or secure as the door to below. It was behind a shelf in the granary and the south cellar. The shelf was on a track that slid back from the granary wall into the anteroom of the quarters. The controlling winch could only be operated from the quarters anteroom. However, a small trapdoor, just big enough for a small person to crawl through, was hidden inside a crate on the bottom shelf. The crate was filled with bags of flour. Without the flour in his hair to make it appear gray, Percy Williams looked his true age, 27 annums. He and Aiden quickly removed the sacks. Then, Aiden leaned into the crate, popped open the trap, and crawled through. Before Percy had the last sack back into the crate, the shelf was moving. The granary echoed with the click, click, click of the winch. Slowly, the quarters anteroom was revealed. Aiden had already crossed the wide chamber and was descending the long ramp down to the quarters. There were almost 30 people waiting in the quarters. It was an enormous area carved from and into a naturally occurring cavern, much like the warehouse level of the basin passage. The quarters could easily house more than 300 if need be and not seem cramped. It was laid out like a small, self-contained village and even had an independent gas system for lighting, heating, and cooking. The only way in or out was through the granary. The team worked quickly and efficiently. They had practiced for exactly this sort of event. Everyone was exhausted by the time they had amassed and stowed everything they could bring down. The team assembled in the anteroom as far.
We're all going to be here for quite some time. At least until Mrs. Greer and the others return. Maybe, probably, longer. Percy, organize a small patrol to take turns topside watching the house?
Yes, miss.
Sorry, I've lost track of time. We all need to get some rest.
A week went by without incident. High conjunction had come and gone. Whatever was supposed to happen at observation base had happened by now, and it was the main topic of conversation among the team. On the surface, the people of New World were still celebrating the long holiday. In a few weeks, they would, as tradition dictated, open their front doors and dig their way out. Many people would clear the snow from the top of their bonfire piles, douse the logs with lighting fluid, and set the pyre ablaze, eventually melting away a large circle of snow, emulating the return of Sol Major and celebrating the coming of planting season. It was the middle of the night, if one could tell. Lenore and Addie were taking the patrol. The gas lights in the hallways were lit so the patrol could see, and hot water still flowed through the iron radiators so the patrols would not freeze. But the fireplaces were dark, and the flues closed to hold out the cold. Lenore was in the great room when she heard what sounded like running water. She saw a stream of liquid flowing across the floor. Her first thought was that a hot water pipe had burst, but the smell dispelled that notion in a hurry. It was lighting fluid, countless liters of fluid, coming from where? She followed the flow back to the fireplace. The dark men were pouring lighting fluid down the chimney. She raced from the great room to the dining room. A stream flowed down the hall, and she didn't need to look in.
Addie? Addie!
There was no answer. Fluid streamed from every room that had a fireplace.
Addie!
Lenore rushed to the rear of the house, where she thought Addie might be. She found her asleep on her grandmother's bed. The floor was soaked in fluid. The bottoms of the draperies and bedclothes sopped it up.
Addie!
Aiden sat up, startled. She was disoriented and partly overcome by the fumes. Lenore grabbed her and dragged her from the bed. Aiden slipped on the wet wood floor, and her clothing became drenched.
What? No time for questions. Come with me. Now.
The two slogged through the stream to the kitchen. Fluid was coming out of the stove vent in the hearth. A horrifying deep whoosh reverberated from the front of the house, and the walls shook. A bluish light came from the hall as the fire spread across the sheen of fluid that covered every floor.
They must have ignited it in the great room.
Aiden still did not fully comprehend what was happening, but she realized the danger.
If the gas lines rupture, the whole house will go up.
Lenore yanked open the cellar door. The fluid was flowing down the stairs. She closed the door and descended to the cellars. The fluid had not yet spread far. Maybe there was hope. They sprinted to the granary. The shelf was in its open position. Lenore called for help, and several people responded.
They've set the house ablaze. Start closing the entrance.
Aiden was fully aware now and flew into action, running down the hall some distance and closing every door she could as she came back.
Good thinking, Addie,
said Lenore when Aiden returned. Lenore slammed the granary door shut. Then they all retreated into the anteroom and watched anxiously as the shelf was cranked closed.
This is still too dangerous. Everyone down to the quarters.
They withdrew to the quarters and waited. A slight trembling and a shower of dust and rock confirmed their fears. All were silent. They were fearful and demoralized, but eventually their discipline and training brought them together to discuss the options. None looked good. Even if there were a clear way out, the council would be watching. They had to stay put. The council would think 10 people had died in the fire. They had their names on a list. But they were unaware of the existence of the others who had been concealed in the quarters. Lenore went to the office Mrs. Greer maintained. She removed a drawer from a cabinet on one wall, reached into the opening, felt around, found what she was told would be there, and removed a small envelope. She withdrew a yellowed card that had a strange symbol on it. When she flipped it over and read what was printed on the other side, a trace of a smile formed on her face, the first in many days. She found a hammer in a tool bay, and then sought out Percy Williams.
Come with me.
Where to?
We need to search the walls near the bottom of the ramp for this marking.
It was 2 intersecting ovals with a dot in the center of the overlapping area. More than an hour later, Percy shouted,
Over here! I've got it!
Lenore ran to Percy's location. She held the card next to the image carved into the stone. She raised the hammer and struck the image 3 times. She waited about 30 seconds, then tapped again. Percy gave her a questioning look. She handed him the card. Read what's on the other side. Percy's eyes widened as he read.
I'll organize the men. We won't stop until we get a response.
For more than 2 days, they tapped 3 times every half minute or so. Morale was low, and the man on duty almost didn't hear the first faint response. Doubtfully, he replied with 3 taps. 2 taps. Emotions flowed. He struck the wall forcefully 2 times. Then tears welled up in his eyes and he yelled,
They're here!
End of chapter 7. Next up, historian.